All right, perfect. So I'll go ahead and record it then. All right, so to jump right into this, real quick, if I go back into our demo site, actually, let me just get to the link here really quick. So if you just go to demo.epmlive.com, you'll see that we get to the portal site, our demo portal. And there's really 3 different demo sites that you can get access to. We have our PPM demo site, which is a site that we'll go into here. We have an IT demo site, which not only includes the PPM capabilities, but it also includes service requests, help desk, and all the other sort of IT work management type functions. And then we have what we call our apps demo. And the apps demo environment really isn't all that much different than the PPM demo site or the IT demo site. We have a number of other applications that we deployed there. And I think the best way to explain this would be is if I just really quickly go to our EPM Live Marketplace, you'll see here that we have a number of different applications that as an EPM Live customer you can very easily download and install. As a matter of fact, it takes less than a minute for most of these applications. So if you're using EPM Live today, for example, to manage your IT projects, but then realize that you want to go ahead and implement maybe a project backlog system, or you want to have a service request management capability within EPM Live that you already don't have today, well, you can very easily get this product now, and what that would simply do is install directly on that apps demo environment. Okay, and what that does is it shows you how easy it is to install new applications and what that would look like from an EPM Live perspective. So if you wanted to give that a try, you might want to go to the apps demo site. These 2 demo sites are locked down in the sense that we're not allowing anyone to really sort of install apps, and we're doing that purposely because these are shared environments, so other customers and partners have access to this. Whereas this environment, you can pretty much go ahead and install any kind of app that you want in that environment. So if you wanted to give that a try, you might have a look there, and provides all the same functionality, but you'll be able to extend that functionality and install any of these applications in that demo environment. Okay? So pretty cool. You might want to play around with that a little bit. So I'm going to go into the PPM demo site here. All right, and then you should actually see the Contoso Corporation homepage.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes there's a little bit of latency, so I usually like to check with the attendees just to make sure that you can actually see what I'm seeing. So, so this is our homepage, and you'll see here that on the homepage there's a number of different features within EPM Live that I have access to, and obviously depending on how you set up the permissions and the security models that you implement within EPM Live, you can actually control what features people have access to and what things they can and can't see. Now, I'm logged in as a project manager, as a resource manager, as a team member, and as an administrator with limited capabilities and executive too. So I should be able to see everything that I need to be able to see across multiple different roles, right? So here, just on this landing page, I've got a list of all my active projects. I have a list of all the work items that I'm assigned to. And then on the right-hand side, I've got a nice little picture of who I am. I can manage my profile here by clicking on Steve Masters. I also have some other reminders. And then I have a comment stream here that if I wanted to use this from a social collaboration standpoint, I've got that capability available here. All right. Now, one of the things that I think you were looking to see, Kiran, I'm just going to go ahead and go into projects. Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go into resources first and then jump back over to projects. We're obviously centralizing projects and resources and tasks directly within SharePoint. So everything that you're seeing here is an experience, obviously with EPM Live capabilities, but it's all done natively within SharePoint, right? The version of SharePoint that you're looking at today is SharePoint 2010, and we have support for the Foundation version as well as the Enterprise version, and our product acts and behaves the same way regardless of what version of SharePoint 2010 you're currently using today. So I think that's important to know. So what you're seeing here now is basically our enterprise resource pool. So one of the big questions that we get often with our clients is, hey, Matt, is there a place where I can go to manage all of my resources, and is there any way for me to be able to see what people are currently working on today and what they're committed to? And the answer is absolutely, 100%. The resource pool is an enterprise resource pool where you can list all of the resources within the organization. They could be named resources, generic skill sets, and or facilities or other types of resources that may not necessarily be human capital, right? Like an office building, a machine, a room, you know. So those are things that obviously you can manage within the resource pool. Now, what's also nice within the resource pool is I can select any one of these resources here, and I can very easily view the level of work that they're committed to from an assignment perspective. So on this, Kiran, it goes back to the concept that I had asked or talked about earlier, which is the top-down resource planning versus the bottom-up planning. The bottom-up planning, we have what we call the assignment planner. And what the assignment planner does is it gives us visibility into every specific work item or task that they're assigned to from the bottom-up perspective, right? So from this standpoint, it doesn't look like Adam Barr has any, but if I go to Steve Masters is really the guy that we want to look at anyhow. And make sure we got him selected. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and look at his assignments. What this should show me is a list of all the project-based tasks that he's assigned to, as well as all the other non-project-based work items that he might be responsible for. So this gets into that level of granularity where you're really at that task or assignment level. Okay, so the way that you would drive this information into the system is you would either use MS Project to build out the detailed schedule and tasks and assign his name to those tasks, or you would use our project planner, which is really a web-based planning tool, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. That works very similar to Microsoft Project, but it's completely web-based, and you don't need to use MS Project. So that might be something you might want to take a closer look at for those users that don't have Project installed. Okay. So from here, you can see what Steve is currently working on. There's only 2 items here. We've got the train support staff and the deploy software. What's really cool about this is I actually have the ability to move start and finish date. So if I need to level for some reason, or if I need to be able to fit, create some white space and some availability for Steve during a certain time frame, I can very easily do that here using the assignment planner. Okay, and once those changes have been approved, I could, of course, publish that, and it would, in effect, update the start and the finish dates of those tasks. So this is where I would obviously get involved and really start to manage assignments or resources at the assignment level. Okay, so that's the bottom-up approach. The other approach that we talked about earlier is the top-down approach, and we have what we call a resource planner. And what the resource planner allows us to do is take any resource that we have in the resource pool and assign them to projects and work items and build out capacity or forecasts on a month-by-month basis. So rather than saying, hey, Steve's going to be working on these specific tasks, which is really more of that bottom-up approach, right? What we're simply saying here is, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to need Steve for 40 hours for the next 6 months, and I want to commit him to these projects and work items over the next 6 months, right? So you'll see here that we're just committing Steve's time on a month-by-month basis and the number of hours that we think we're going to need him. Now, what's really cool is you'll notice that we're looking directly into the resource pool. So this bottom grid looks into that resource pool, and it tells us where Steve's capacity is today, based on all the assignments that he's been assigned to and all the other project and work items that he's on today. And it also gives us an idea if whether or not we've exceeded his capacity or if we've over-allocated Steve's time, right? So you'll see here that black means that we're his remaining availability, which means that he has 168 available hours in the month of August, as opposed to September and October, where he's been over-allocated by 40 hours and 94 hours, respectively, right? So real quickly, from the top down, this is where you would not only see where Steve has been committed to across multiple projects, but this is also a place where you would be able to then plan and say, well, you know what, we're going to need Steve for another 40 hours in May and another 40 hours in June. Okay. Now you'll notice that we actually have a project manager and a resource manager, and we have what we call the resource negotiation tool, and this is something you can either enable or disable. But the way that that tool actually works is there's a bit of governance that's involved with a negotiation tool, and the only way that Steve is going to be fully committed or allocated to those projects or work items, at least from the resource planner perspective, is if both the project manager and the resource manager agree to those commitments, right? So you'll see here that the project manager has accepted. I, of course, am a resource manager, so I can go ahead and accept this, but if within your organization you might have the project manager might be someone else that's entirely different than the resource manager. In that scenario, what would then end up happening here is once I hit save, it would go through the negotiation workflow and then notify the resource manager that Steve has been proposed for 40 hours the month of May and June in 2013. And at that point, the resource manager can either accept or reject that proposal. If it accepts, then he's automatically committed. If he rejects, then he can send an email back to the project manager saying, well, you know what, I can't give you 40 hours because I've got another project that's going to need Steve. I can only give you 20 hours. Does this work fine? Right? So you start that sort of, it's a way to sort of manage or facilitate that negotiation process.
Yep.
Okay. So do you see how that works?
Yep.
Okay. So another way to actually do this, and obviously the way that we're looking at it right now is from the resource perspective, but we can also do the same thing from a project perspective. So if we go ahead and click on projects here, what this is going to do is take us to our project center, which is a place where we have all of the projects centralized into one view. The default view here, just based on permissions, is my projects, but because I have executive capabilities, I can switch the view here using a SharePoint list view. I can change it to the executive summary, and what this is going to do is present not only my project, but it's also going to present other projects that are being actively managed in our system today. Okay, so the other way that we could approach the resource planning and forecasting is by project. So let's say we've got a new project here that we're just going to roll out, and what we need to do is indicate how many resources we need and how much effort it's going to take, right? So we'll take, for example, this HQ building renovation project that's being proposed, and what we're going to go ahead and do is open up the resource planner. So rather than looking at it in terms of a resource perspective, what we're looking at it now is from a project perspective. So we have generic skill sets here on this particular project. I, of course, can go directly into the resource pool, and I can select the named resource here, and I can drag that resource up onto this project, or I can say, you know what, I need a project manager. I want to go ahead and use the match function, and I want to see what resources match not only the skill set that I need, but also the hours of availability, right, remaining availability. So Steve Masters during the month of October is, as we saw in the other resource planner, he was over allocated by 94 hours during the month of October, but in November, he's available 94 hours. You'll see that his match percentage is 88%, and that's because he meets the skill set, but he doesn't have the hours available during the month of October. All the other months he's good for, except for the month of October. So it doesn't seem like that he would be a really good candidate. At this point, we can either choose Eli, Joe, Lori, or Patrick, right? So in this scenario, what I could do is say, you know what, Patrick looks great. I'm just going to go ahead and drag Patrick onto the project manager. And hold on a second here. There you go. And it says, do you want to fulfill the plan requirement row or replace with the selected resources? So I can either fulfill or I can replace. If I fulfill, that basically means that I might have one or more resources that I would want to allocate to that task. And between those two resources, they would be able to satisfy the 80 hours required for that commitment. But in this scenario, Patrick is available for the hours that are required over the next 4 months. So in this scenario, I'm just going to go ahead and say replace. And what that's going to do is automatically put Patrick in place with that generic skill set, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. And what that does is it marks the project manager as having accepted this. Now, as a resource manager, I could, of course, accept this too as well, because I have that permission and that capability, and that would, at that point, automatically commit Patrick to this project, right? But again, the way that we're approaching this here is actually planning resources and planning resource capacity from a project perspective, right?
So, Steve, I had a question. So,
Sure.
is this built using Excel services?
I'm sorry, could you repeat
And
the question?
I mean, and this application on SharePoint, is it built does it need Excel services to be turned on?
No, it does not require or utilize Excel services. Although I think some of the grids here may look like Excel, these are actually planners that we build. So these are controls that this is our IP and our code and capabilities that we own that work within SharePoint.
Okay.
So Excel services is not required. As a matter of fact, the enterprise version of SharePoint is not required to run any of the EPM Live capabilities that you're seeing.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and close that out. And then again, we can plan resources for any one of these projects that we need to be able to plan. Now, one of the really cool things about this is you can actually take your entire portfolio after you've built out your resource plans, right? So you'll see here that we're able to manage proposed projects as well as active projects. And what's really nice about that is we can take commitments to projects and analyze them or compare them against to what's being demanded within the IT organization, which in this case are proposed projects or work items, right? So what we want to be able to do is look at what we're already committed to and compare that to what's being proposed. So once all the resource plans have been built during the proposal phase, what we can then do is we can go into the resource analyzer and we're just going to go calendar months here. And let me just open up total columns here just so that you understand exactly what we're looking at. So the way that we configure this view is, number one, we want to show the totals by resource, right? So each named resource that we have in our portfolio that are assigned to these projects in our portfolio that I've selected, we want to show the totals on a month-by-month basis. And we also want to show, well, I guess in this case, we're only going to be showing totals. And then we want to enable the heat map, which shows us the red, yellow, and green. And the reason we want to do that is we want to overlay what we are committed to as opposed to what the availability is for resources. What that's going to do is tell us whether or not we're over-allocating any of our resources today based on the commitments that we have in our pipeline. Now, you can compare the totals on the top grid to the totals on the bottom grid. And in this scenario, we want to compare it against availability, right? So what the top grid is telling us, when I've selected the resource, our portfolio, what I'm saying is I want to look at all these projects in this portfolio and all of the resource assignments by resource on a month-by-month basis, and I want to display that in the top grid. What I want to do is compare that portfolio against the remaining availability of resources that we have in the resource pool, and I need the system to tell me if any of the assignments are greater than the availability in the resource pool. If so, I want it to display red, right? So what we're looking at here is anything in red basically means that we've exceeded the capacity in this scenario here for Ed Meadows during the month of July and September and October based on what we have in our pipeline today, both proposed as well as active projects. If we were to move forward, continue to do business with the portfolio as it stands today, Ed Meadows is clearly over-allocated July, September, and October. So we have some over-allocations here. Now, we can choose not to do anything about it, right, which in this scenario, since we have the information, would be completely irresponsible. But now that we have this information, now we can start to make some decisions here within the resource pool, or at least within the portfolio, and say, well, what can we do differently to correct the over-allocations that we have here for Ed Meadows and any other resource that we have in the resource pool. All right. Does that make sense, gentlemen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So a couple of things that we can actually do here. You can force in and force out. So one of the things that I don't have here, but we can easily add into the view, is give me a second here. Let me just change. I want to show a column. I'm going to select a column here, and I think the column that I want to show is. I think let's see if we have it here. Do we have? Oh, there we go. We have priority. So I have priority here. Let's see if we have anything in there. We don't have anything in there. Let me just open this up. Okay. Now I can use the priority column. It looks like we don't have it set up within the demo environment, but if you had to make very difficult decisions, one of the things you're going to want to do to drive that decision-making process is maybe to consider something like priority or overall alignment to strategic goals and objectives. So depending on what that threshold is and what those numbers are, if there's a priority score that you have in mind that says, okay, anything above or below this number or this line, we want to either force in or force out. So since we don't have that there, I'm just going to go ahead and subjectively, just go through this analysis here and start to force out some of these projects. And what this is actually going to do, you'll notice it's going to drive the data or the heat map here in the bottom grid. And what we're simply doing by deselecting that project is stating that we're forcing out that project, meaning that if we're going to take all those resources that are on that project and we're either going to cancel it or we're going to postpone that project. And if we do that, how does that impact or shape our resource expenditures, right? Now, I can either do this on a single project or I can do this for multiple projects. And as a result, I can very quickly see what that impact looks like from a resource utilization perspective, right? Okay. Now, the other thing that we could also do here too as well is we can force in all these projects. As a matter of fact, let me just go into, let me add the column, and I think it's type. Let's look at stage and project type. So you'll see here we have projects that are in the proposal state. So we can actually just open this up. We can actually start to move. So for example, what I'm doing here is you'll notice that we have, for this particular project, let me just collapse that. What I can actually do is I can take these hours and I can do my own what-if analysis and say, well, what if I were to move the 40 hours or the start date of this project and all the resource commitments starting in July all the way into November? Let's see how that actually impacts our expenditures, right? So what we're able to do here within the resource analyzer is not only be able to see, from an IT demand perspective, we can say, what are we currently working on today? And based on the incoming demand in IT pipeline for work and projects, do we have the bandwidth to be able to deliver on all the projects and all the proposed projects within our portfolio today? And that's what we're looking at right now. We're looking at both proposed projects as well as active projects, and we're saying, based on the resource plans across the board, do we have what it takes to be able to execute against this? And you'll see here that for the most part we do, but there are some red areas. And what this does is it tells us, okay, we're going to really have to, get a bit more specific here in terms of trying to correct some of these over allocations. But generally speaking, about 80% of what we have in our resource plan today and our resource bandwidth, it looks like that we do have that ability. We're just going to have to move maybe some assignments around or maybe some projects around, or maybe reassign some of that work to other resources to help out with some of these over allocations, right? But what the resource analyzer does is it helps you analyze incoming IT demand against what you've already committed to in your portfolio, and it gives you a heat map and shows you visually whether or not you've over allocated or if you're well within your resource capacity. Okay. Does that make any sense, gentlemen?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I had two questions.
Sure.
First one was, so can I plan for my project demand without having a work plan behind it, without having a detailed schedule behind it,
Uh,
or
one-
is
one-
this data?
100%. As a matter of fact, that's typically what we see in the process and how people use EPM Live is they usually start from the top down. Once the project has been given approval and the budget and the resources have been approved as well, then the responsibility would be on the project manager to then to build out the detailed schedule. So the process that we're going through right now is just that process, right? So we take, for example, the HQ building renovation, and we're going to go ahead and say edit resource plan. And what we're simply doing here is rather than building a detailed schedule from the bottom up, what we're doing is simply planning the resources at the highest level, which in this case would be at the project level.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And my second question was, I have had a brain freeze. I forgot my question. I'll ask it when it comes back to me.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. So, so if I want to plan the schedule only at a milestone level, let's say, I do not want to have detailed work plan.
Mm-hmm.
Can that also be accommodated? I mean, does this enforce the MS project kind of?
Not at all. You can choose to either continue. Yeah, I think I know where you're going at with the question. It sounds like that is a detailed schedule, or would the use of MS Project be required in order for you to be able to manage this project in the system, correct?
Right, right.
Yeah. And the short answer is no. So you could either decide to manage it at this highest level, or you can manage it at the lowest level, which would require building out that plan either using our project planner or using MS Project, right? So you don't necessarily have to go to that level of granularity, but if you decide that that's the level of granularity you need to go to, then we do have the ability, and you can choose which planner you want to use. Do you want to use MS Project, or do you want to use our project planner? So it's not required, though.
Perfect. Got it.
Okay. All right. And I think that pretty much touches on just some of the key pain points around the resource capacity planning and the resource loading. Kiran, I don't know if there's anything else specifically you want to touch on before I jump into some of the other areas here, just so that you're familiar with them.
No, continue. I think we'll cover this. We get how this is approaching it, and similar to what we have in mind. So,
okay.
Yeah, let's touch up on some of the other areas. We've got
okay.
20-odd minutes.
Okay, good. So the other thing I wanted to go ahead and show you here is that we have what we call a feature called associated items, and the associated items capability is actually really nice because what you can actually do within SharePoint is you can take any list item within your SharePoint sites and you can associate it to another list item within EPM Live, right? So for example, the HQ building renovation is not only, in our eyes, the way that we see it, it's a project that we're managing and it has resources and costs associated with it, but it's also a list item within SharePoint. And if we look at the ribbon here within SharePoint, you'll notice that we have a number of other associated items that are related to this particular project, right? So this item has, or this project in this scenario actually has changes, it has an issue or issues, it's got project documents, it has status reports, it's got risks, and there are some tasks associated with it, right? So if I wanted to very easily see, for example, what the risks or issues are, I can very easily click on issues, and it would actually bring me into the issue center, and it would tell me specifically what the issues are relating to this particular project. Now, there aren't any, however, if there were, I'd be able to see that very easily, right? Now, to go at this one level higher, if I move from projects into portfolios, what we can actually do is we can associate multiple projects to a portfolio, or what most people would consider a strategic goal or business initiative, right? So in the portfolio center, you can actually define what your key business objectives are or what the key business initiatives are. And as part of your decision-making process, one of the things that most organizations do is when they go through their vetting process, they basically have to ask themselves, well, if we go with this project or if we go with this work, how does that fit or align with our strategic goals and objectives, right? So what we're allowing customers to be able to do here is within the portfolio center is not only define and list out all of the key strategic goals and objectives and business initiatives here, but we're also giving them the ability to be able to map projects to these business initiatives, right? So if, for example, if I wanted to look at, product innovation is a key thing for a lot of organizations today, right? So what are we doing as an organization or as a unit within the organization to, promote or contribute to the idea of being innovative, or, a very innovative company? Well, as an executive, I can click on the Project Center here, and I can see all the projects and all the initiatives and all the work items that relate to product innovation. So we actually have 3 items, right? So we have the feature request database, Surface tablet software, Xbox DVD. We can very easily see what the overall status is for each one of these projects. Now we can also, from here, start to drill a little bit further. So this is where the associated items features, becomes very useful because it allows you to drill in much further now, right? So we can say, well, I want to see all the changes, or I want to see all the issues or risks for each one of these projects. And I think there actually might be an issue here for Xbox DVD. And yes, there are. And then we can go even further. So there might be some tasks or documents or other issues that might be related to this specific issue. So in this scenario, if you wanted to get to the most granular level of detail, using the associated items feature, we have that ability, right? Now, what's really cool about using the associated items is that we actually have cascading permissions, which means that if you can set permissions anywhere you want in this in the associated items model, right? So you can either set it at the issue level, you can set it at the task level, you can set it at the document level, the project level, or in this scenario, at the portfolio level. The beauty about the permissions is that at whatever level you set it at, anything below that level, those users would have access to, right? So if we say, I want to set permissions at the product innovation portfolio level, anything that's associated to the product innovation level, those end users would have access to. So they'd be able to see all the projects relating to that portfolio, all the issues relating to those projects within that portfolio, and all the documents and subsequent associated items relating to those items within the product innovation umbrella, right? So we do have that cascading permissions, which is really, really cool. And that's something that we've actually had to design ourselves and build on top of SharePoint, right? Okay. It sounded like that there might have been a question there. Do you guys have any questions?
I don't so far.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that's a pretty nifty feature. And then one of the other things that we're also doing within EPM Live is you'll notice that we have what we call communities. And the communities is actually a really cool feature that you can use in a number of different ways. And the way that we actually have it set up is based on function. And what I mean by that is that the default community that each customer gets is what we call the project community, and that's a place where you manage all of your projects. We also have what we call the My Workplace community, where and I know you had mentioned this earlier, Kiran, that time tracking and expenses and things like that isn't something that you're necessarily looking to do today. However, what the My Workplace community allows you to do when you decide that might be something you want to take advantage of down the road is it gives the team members one place that they can go to see what all the responsibilities are, right? So what the My Workplace community does, it tells me all the things that are related to me, but it also gives them the ability to complete a timesheet if you want them to do that, maybe request some time off, or maybe if there's a request or a to-do list that they have to be able to manage, this gives them the ability to manage all things relating to them as an end user. Okay. So that's the My Workplace community, but another way that you can actually use these communities is you can use them based on geography. You can use them, you can deploy communities and leverage it based on function within the organization. So IT might have a community, sales and marketing might have their own community, operations could have their own community, or you might have it just based on project teams, right, or IT departments. So you might have the infrastructure team that would have their own community. Then you might have software development team would have their own community, and then another community might be the IT executive community. So there's a lot of different ways that you can leverage that, but the best way to explain how we're positioning the communities is really creating these very specific workplaces for different types of end users and different types of organizations to be able to get relevant information in a very quick and easy way. right? So someone that's in IT may not necessarily need to see something within sales and marketing, so you can create those different communities. But the beauty about that is everyone can coexist on the same platform, so they can still use EPM Live and SharePoint, and they can use it in a way that makes sense for them. So sales and marketing, they can have their own configuration, and then IT can obviously have their own IT-specific configuration and deploy their own apps based on what they feel is right for them without impacting or affecting what sales and marketing does within their own community. So it's a great way to really sort of segment the businesses, but cohabitate on the same platform. And obviously, by doing that, you create a huge opportunity to be able to integrate and share information across multiple functions within the organization. Right? Okay. So any questions on that?
No, it's probably not something we'll use in the short term, but who knows down the road, right?
Right. Exactly. And yeah, most definitely. And so the other areas you'll notice here within EPM Live is we have the task area, right? So if this again gets into that granularity, so if you do have projects where you've built out these schedules and you do have, MS project plans or EPM Live project planner tasks behind these projects, you can come to the task center and very easily see, what those tasks look like. These, of course, are just the tasks that I'm responsible for, but we can easily change this view and say, well, instead of seeing my tasks, I want to see all active tasks. All right, and what this does is it'll actually produce all the projects and all the tasks. And what's also really nice here, too, is I have the ability, if I wanted to, I can view this information in a Gantt chart, right? So that standard Microsoft project view, you get a list of all the tasks, all the projects, and I have my Gantt chart view. We can produce that same view here using a web browser within EPM Live and SharePoint. Yep, there we go. And we can go directly to that task. Okay? You see how that works?
Yep.
And then we have the issues area, we have the document area. So if you're using SharePoint today, the document repository is definitely an area that one of those native SharePoint features that we're leveraging. So there really isn't anything different or special that we're doing with the document repository. We, of course, clearly are extending the value of SharePoint from being just a pure document repository, right? So the documents area is standard SharePoint. Then we have our resource pool, and then we have the reporting area, right? And so the reporting area is where I'll finish off at. In the reporting area, you'll see here that we have a number of pre-built reports that come out of the box that are shipped actually with EPM Live. I think we have about close to 80 different reports that we have in the system. And, obviously the outputs will drive the inputs, right? So depending on what you want to report on will ultimately drive what information you need to be able to centralize and capture within EPM Live and SharePoint. So you'll see here that because we are managing a change list, we do have an issues list, we do have the ability to manage requests and risks and issues and tasks and timesheets. We have the ability to report very easily on those work items, right? So you'll see here that, for example, under timesheets, we have the My Timesheet report. We have timesheets that have been approved by project managers, timesheets that have been approved by timesheet managers, and then we have some general timesheet reports. One of the really cool things about what we've done here is we're actually utilizing SQL reporting services, which is it's a native tool that comes on and installed on SQL, so there wouldn't really be any additional licensing. You would just have to simply turn on reporting services, and you'd be able to take advantage of these reports. But what's great about this is it's just another way of gaining visibility and insight into the data that's being managed within EPM Live. So the same way that we were able to produce, what people are currently working on as opposed to what the overall capacity is, that red, yellow, green sort of heat map, we have the same capability and or the same ability to produce that using SQL reporting services. So let me show you what I mean by that. So we'll go into the resource work versus capacity view, which is looking at all of the work that we're currently committing our resources to, and what we want to do is compare that against the baseline capacity, right? So are we over allocating? Are we underutilizing? And if we are over or underutilizing, which one of the resources are being under and overutilized, right? So this report would be able to answer that question very easily, Now, we can select all the resources that if we wanted to, but in this scenario, we want to go to Steve Masters, right? And we're going to look at all the work items. So again, this is a true work management system where we're not only looking at project-based work, but we're looking at work that's been committed to at the project level as well as work that's committed to at the work level, which includes documents, risks and issues, or any items that might be in workflows. As long as it has a start and finish date and I'm assigned to that item and there's hours committed to that work item, it will actually appear as a work item in my resource capacity planner, right? So I'm going to look at all types of work that resources are assigned to, and I'm going to look at, let's see, we'll go back to September. So we'll say September 1st through today. We can either look at this on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, or annual. Monthly seems to be the most popular method, so we're going to go ahead and run that report. Give it just a few seconds here. So there we go. So we have Steve Masters. And then you'll see here that we have his resource work versus capacity, and these are all the projects that he's currently assigned to. He's got 1, 2, 3. Actually, he's got other work. No projects, and then 2 feature requests and Xbox DVD. And you'll see here that this is what his availability is, and what we're looking at is his overall capacity on a month-by-month basis, as opposed to the work that he's been assigned to within the system. Okay, and so of course, this is just on Steve Masters, but we can very easily run this report against anyone else that we have here in our resource pool. Okay. So just another way to look at the information. Again, it's all coming from the same source. It's all stored in databases and in lists. As a matter of fact, this report is pulling directly from the EPM Live database, and I believe we are giving customers access to that database. So there's a lot of different things that you can do in terms of using other reporting tools to report against on items within that database. All right. So do you see how that works? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously there's 3 different demo areas, but the area that we were in was the PPM demo site. And if you just click around, again, real easy. You have an area where you can manage your portfolios, place where you can manage projects in one central dashboard. You've got a task area. You've got risks and issues, documents, resources, which is our enterprise resource pool. And then we have the reports. And if you wanted to change the communities, you just go up into the upper right-hand corner here, and you can see the resource community and the My Workplace community. Right. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of navigating the site. Now that we've actually had a chance to go through it together, I think once you get an opportunity to go into EPM Live and navigate the demo site, I think it'll all start to make a little bit more sense and become a little bit more familiar now.
Yep.
Okay, so having said that, there's a lot of other things that I didn't really get to touch on. I know we're coming up on the hour here. Was that helpful, Kiran? Did you find that useful, and do you see where EPM Live might be able to sort of add some value to what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I definitely got a pretty good sense of what the tool's capable of and how you built it, and it's in that same general sense of what we have in mind for what I think we need for our needs. We're looking at what I'm calling a project collaboration hub, where teams can share documents, teams have a little transparency around who's available, who's not,
mm-hmm.
and then the reports and basically most of what you have in the top tabs is what I see us needing. And so yeah, this is good. It gives us a good sense. We're also looking at a couple other similar SharePoint-based tools that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
There are questions I have around, is this something that we would get from you and not be able to change anything to, or is this something that, how does that work? That part I don't think I saw in your site. Do we use it as is, or are we able to change it?
Well, yeah, you can definitely configure and customize this. There's no doubt about that. There are a couple of controls that that would require some. Well, a lot of it really, I guess, just depends on what it is you want to configure and what you want to customize and change. But things like, for example, the resource and the cost planner, those are definitely
Right.
controls that we offer and we manage ourselves, right?
Okay.
So that isn't necessarily a SharePoint thing. That would obviously be something that, if there's anything that would need to be changed inherently within the code, then obviously, that would require us to go in there and do that. But in terms of anything that might be touching SharePoint, for example, for, things like creating new views, maybe adding a new field or a new data point to a new view, or let's say that you wanted to go ahead and add another column here, like you wanted to add risk status, right? That's something that you could very easily manipulate, and that's all done directly through SharePoint. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll have to sit down. If you have an idea of the things that you want to change just based on how you want to use it, I can sit down with you and say, well, that's something that you can certainly do within SharePoint. However, these items, based on how you want to change them, would require us to get involved in, it's either considered customization and/or might need to, we might need someone that knows EPM Live very well to be able to help you with some of those changes.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that helps.
So
That's all I have. Himanshu,
question.
do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had a question about. Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Mike, so do you provide this as a managed service in the cloud, or do we have to install it on our server?
We actually support both options. So if you want to have this in the cloud, you can. If not, then we do have perpetual licenses, and you can install and deploy this locally on any SharePoint instance or server that you have today. So right now it's about 50-50. So 50% of our clients are in the cloud, and the other 50% are large enterprise clients that already have SharePoint. So they choose to deploy it locally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so about the pricing, how is your pricing structured?
Great question. So the way that the pricing works is it's on a per user basis. Assuming that you want to go with a perpetual license for on-premise, it's a one-time fee that you would pay. And with the version that you just saw right now, the pricing starts at about $285 per user. And the reason I say it starts there is because, number one, we have volume discounting, and then number two, we have additional services that we can offer, like help desk support, as well as EPM Live University training, which is an online university. It's 24/7. So if those are two things that you want to add, then it's 30% more. But the base fee just for the license alone is $285 per user. And then we have volume discounts at every 50 users. So the next volume discount would be at 50 users. Then following that, it would be at 150, and then following that would be at 200. So it just depends on the number of users that you would need to have in the system.
Right.
And the other thing too is
So
we also have what we call. I'm sorry.
Let's say, I mean, if we purchase a perpetual license for, let's say, 500 users, but if we, as new employees come on board, we may need more or less licenses. So how does that work? Because is there any way, I mean, do we have to keep tab of how many users are using SharePoint right now, and that they license these accordingly?
Well, in Central Admin and within the SharePoint admin, there are ways where you can actually administrate what level of licensing end users have. So we have what we call our team member license. So depending on the features and functionalities you want different users to have access to, we have what we call a full user license and a team member license, right? So looking at the Enterprise Edition, we'll just go ahead and hide Professional here. Because the version that we just saw today with the cost planner and the work planner, that high-level planning, it's only available in Enterprise. And so in looking at that, and we'll just go ahead and just minimize this, you'll see here that both the team and the full users have access to all of these features. but when it gets down to the specific features around managing schedules, managing resource assignments and capacity plans, creating workspaces, cost planning, and what-if modeling, which is what we saw today, those aren't available on the team member license. So not everyone's going to need license to that. So if you have, let's say, 500 users, but let's say 25 or 50 of them need the enterprise license, we only need to buy 25 full user licenses, and then the remaining team member licenses would only be about $99 per user.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And for and what would be the pricing for the cloud service, cloud-based service?
Yeah, so great question. So if we look at, we have several different editions. We have the free edition, we have the Express, we have Professional, and then we have Enterprise. And the Express,
always stick to Enterprise probably. So.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that this actually works is the further left you go in this pricing continuum, the less functionality you actually gain, right?
Right.
So Enterprise offers the highest level of functionality, and then in our dedicated environments, we not only offer Enterprise, but we offer the the virtual dedicated environments, which gives better performance and access to more resources from a hosting standpoint, right? So the way that this would actually work is, again, we have the full and the team member licensing, and for the full license, it starts at $40 per user per month, and then for the team members, it starts at $15 per user per month.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
In terms of the number of users, about how many staff members do you envision would possibly need access to EPM Live?
Maybe in the hundreds, but we haven't figured out what group would use it first and how they would build out. But Equifax has a fair number of IT resources, so we don't have a conclusive number that I could throw at you.
Okay.
It's going to be the hundreds.
Okay, because we do have volume discounting, so it just depends on what level you're at. For example, we have our on-site volume discount here. And, depending on the number of users that you have, we can offer that volume discount. Okay. And then we can also negotiate server licenses, too. So if you feel like that, hey, this is a long-term relationship, and we love EPM Live, and we want to make it, some corporate standard, but we want, to consider maybe a site license or something, we can, we're open to negotiating that and doing what we can to, to find something that's reasonable for both parties. Okay.
That's it.
All right. So, gentlemen, it was hopefully this is useful. What I'll do is I'll send Kidan, I'll send you an email that includes. I think I may have already done it, but I'll just send you another email. That way you have it in front of you, and if you want to go ahead and forward it to Himanshu, you can do that. But I'll send you a link and the username and the password to the live demo site that we just looked at. And I'd suggest take a couple of days, take a week or so to go through the demo environment. And if you have any issues or any questions, we have a product expert on my team that I can escalate questions to. So if you feel like you get stuck or just not understanding exactly how I was able to do something and you're not able to do it, don't feel like that you can't reach out. Just reach out to me, and I have someone that we can work with, and they can help with any questions or concerns you might have during your evaluation. What I typically like to do is after a week that our customers have had access to the environment, I like to follow up and have kind of a live Q&A session. So if there's any other questions or concerns you might have as a result of, the experience you've had with the demo site, we have, I get a product expert on the call, and you can, ask any additional questions you have or discuss any concerns you have regarding EPM Live. So what I'll probably do is send something out. I'll propose a date in maybe a week or so, and we can use that as kind of a quick checkpoint just to see where you are and to see whether or not you feel like that EPM Live might be something you might want to look at a little more closely, and maybe something that would be a possible shortlist candidate for your evaluation.
Okay, let's keep in touch. Let's play around with it, and we'll let you know where we're going with it.
All right, well, sounds good. Thanks for your time, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem, and I'll send you a link to the recording, too, as well, as soon as I have it up on the FTP site.
Great, please do.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Take
Bye.
care.